Yoshi up here. Here's up here. Even if if we don't have them doing a whole lot of talking, we like to have our people up here so that you guys can get familiar with some of the ambassadors and know who to look for if you ever have important questions. Oh, we have Devesa in here too. I'll add you to the stage. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Devesa is responsible for our monster art, so that's definitely a name that you guys should get to know.
Is this being recorded?
Yes, I believe Satoshi is recording it. Let's see. Yep, she's got us going. And she said 1 hour max. So instead of just kind of sitting around while people join, we'll go ahead and get started. Let me check and see. Okay, we have PKT in here. So we can get started with your questions first. I know you had quite a few. Don't worry about the time. We can always have another AMA if we run over, or we can answer these in the text channel. So not a problem. But yeah, we'll get right into it. If I end up talking over a question, or if you guys need to stop, just ping me or Yoshi or someone else like Ferris hop in with voice and just let me know. Okay. So going to the AMA channel. AT's question. I see Discord sounds in the volume mixer. Ooh, okay. Do they come through on my end? Can anyone answer that for me in the AMA channel? Like when I'm talking on here, do you hear my Discord pings? Okay. Well, maybe if it was on the recording side, then maybe that's something that's happening on Satoshi's end. Yeah, okay. So Satoshi, if possible, if that was something that was coming through on your end, you can like mute notifications for the duration of the recording. That'll help with like the quality of the playback. And then, as usual, if I have connection issues, let me know. I am at a hotel, so it is kind of spotty at times. So always important to make sure that it's coming through crystal clear for you guys. Ooh, okay. Well, we know if it's like actually bad. Switch to my phone. Not a problem. Okay, so it's 5:03 my time, so we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, going right into PKT's questions. Are Mons and Sense the final token name? Some debates chat whether Sense is not too confusing. If it's not final, we could have community competition or voting for the name to see if we can come up with something. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We actually did some of this in the past, and that's how we landed on these names. So Mons, we want it to be named something that is relevant enough to the project, or someone on the outside would still be able to associate it with Monster Champions. I'm not opposed to doing something that's more thematic with like the internal stuff in the game. Totally fine with that as long as we feel like we can justify it, and not people. It's getting tough to pick something that is like unique and not found in any other project, because there are a lot out there. So thing to keep in mind too. We want to differentiate where we can, and then Sense is just based off of our internal game name that takes place in the world of Centuria. Sounds kind of like ancient to us, but yeah. So happy to have a public discussion on that. I think it'd be fun with, even if we don't end up changing the names. For Mon's total supply and mission handling, most interested about 50% to the community. A chunk will come from LP. Already need some to start with, so how many and how will it be delivered? Yeah, so I'll have to defer to Nat's tokenomics document on that one. I may have to give you a text answer right after this because I'm not outstanding with tokenomics numbers. I do know that we're going to be distributing those to the community with a partial lockup. I think Nat and I had talked about 50% lockup. Don't quote me too tightly on that. I don't know if it's explicitly in our document, so I may need to go add that in for you guys. But yeah, and then we're going to be seeding it with liquidity from our Genesis mint. So we are not taking profits from this like a normal mint would. We're cycling it all back into the ecosystem. So that's going to be probably our like biggest source of liquidity for this project for the tokenomics. And then yeah, with that initial airdrop, we'll have a really large chunk of the community. And then with like some locking mechanisms to make sure that it's not all being pulled out. Champions, there would be two types of champions, Genesis and yeah, like a free to play type. As their plan to have something like a higher tier champion, which value would be between. No, not really. I think that we want to retain the Genesis champion value wherever possible. I don't think it's going to be hard to do that. But at the same time, we don't want to make it harder for people to see the value in it. So I think having that distinction is going to be important. There are a lot of directions that we can expand champions in general. So basically, we're designing the Genesis champions to be immutable in a sense. So any like further game implementation that involves changes to them will not be actually like changing your token itself. So your NFT will remain the same. Rather, we're just going to change how the game interacts with that NFT. So we're going to be introducing stuff like secondary skills down the road. Like potentially like a champion pair or team. So you can rather than picking one champion to lead you into battle, perhaps you can take two, and so one of them kind of acts as like a or down like secondary champion for you. So there are a lot of expansion options that we have and ways that we can mix and match those champions, but it won't involve like adding like a middle tier. I think it wouldn't be fair to Genesis champion holders add that in. And really, I don't know that it would be fair to like free to play people either, because it would require them probably to pay for something. I'd rather just kind of there's that gap in a natural way that encourages ownership of both. Sense utility, main utility volume be in the form of champions and events. Sorry, I mumbled through that. I forget that some people in this recording will not have the text in front of them. So, question number 4: sense utility. The main utility volume be in the form of champions and variant monsters mints. What other ideas to sense do you have in mind? So sense being the in-game token, going to used for a ton of things. It's going to be used for running dungeons. So within our game, we'll have like dungeons and quests and such that you're running pretty much constantly. We're going to give you like energy, which is a common resource in any mobile game. Energy will regenerate over time, and so sense will be used to recharge that energy and allow you to run your dungeons more frequently, which means that you're accumulating rewards more frequently. Refilling that energy will allow you to earn in-game rewards, but refilling it with sense will give you additional opportunity to earn like on-chain rewards and higher value items. So really going to be encouraging people to do those refills with the sense token in order to help drive the economy further. We're going to have a couple more like heavy sinks in the game as well. Some of them will be team oriented. So like when you get into PvP and guild based stuff, we'll have some sinks there, and then we'll have a heavy sink for the energy refills, and then additional sinks where necessary. But as far as like the early versions of the game, the most significant one that you need to be aware of is the energy refills, because that's where you're generating like a lot of in-game and on-chain items to drive both your gameplay and potential revenue if that's something that you're seeking from the game. And supply will be admitted as staking rewards for mon stakers and then relayed to Sense USD CLP. those who need it could buy it. That's a question that I'll have to ask Nat because I am not, like I mentioned earlier, not great with the mechanics on like the in-depth side of tokenomics. I know the first part is 100% true. Since supply will be emitted as a staking reward for Mon's stakers. As far as relaying to the LP, I don't know the technical ins and outs of that. If you can elaborate on the question differently, maybe I'll understand better and be able to piece that together based on like my non-technical knowledge of it. I can reference Nat on that and get you like a textual answer from him. Last question from PKT. These have been great so far, by the way. Thank you for asking them. Will champions be actionable characters in game or more like monster controllers from within the shadows? I would say somewhere in the middle. It's not going to be like a free roaming world where you're walking around. So actionable in that sense, no. But controllers from within the shadows, definitely, because their abilities that impact your monsters are like passive abilities. You're not going to have to like activate them every battle or anything. However, they will have actionable abilities, especially as we expand them down the road. We could see there being a lot of opportunity for growth in the ways that your champion interacts in a battle. And then on top of that, when we get to like our land play segment of the roadmap, that's when you'll have probably like a free roaming world. We're still not going to do it like if we do a land play, it's going to be unique. We're not going to try to do the like this is a like Pokemon style game where you're running through a bunch of regions. Like that's something overplayed, and we want to do something unique with it. So it's going to be probably more like a battle style type thing, where you're like walking into people and opponents, probably like automated at first and then led down the road. But in terms of, sorry, rambling a bit, but in terms of actionable characters, I'd say it's somewhere in the middle. There'll be a little bit of management there, but it's not going to be like a motion control deal on your end. Then also, congratulations, you are now on the whitelist because you asked fantastic questions. Okay, we're now moving forward to. I'm gonna hope that these people are in here. If I answer a question and they're not in here yet, I apologize. But we're just gonna keep going in order down the list. Yeah. So, okay. A good-looking project. I'd like to ask about the PvP and combat system. How complex gameplay would you like to accomplish? Are there any other games you could compare this to? Have any plans to be an esports game? Tournaments with backed prizes and such. I'll break this question into parts. We will have PvP and combat system. Gameplay will be pretty complex. It's not going to be like TCG style gameplay where you're putting together a deck with like a cost system. Instead, we're using a speed system to dictate initiative between the monsters in battle. Each monster species will have its own like unique set of skills. So it'll be up to you to combine those skills in a battle and react to your opponent's choices and their builds in order to overcome them in the battle. And so it's going to be a bit more dynamic strategy, in terms of like who you're targeting and stuff. It's not going to be, like cost system that you might be familiar with to a TCG. I would say you can compare this more to mobile games. Brave Frontier and Summoner's War are two like pretty good examples. Not so much like Hearthstone. We've been compared to Hearthstone a little bit because of the art and the cards and such. But the actual like gameplay is going to be more like Brave Frontier most likely. I would say, depending on your interpretation of it. Esports is also something that we're definitely interested in. We think esports is a really cool like space. We would love to be a part of it. anytime you have a competitive scene, it would be great if you could bring that to more people, and we think it's a great way to expand. And then tournaments with back prizes plays into that. We're gonna have like in-game structure for that, so in-game leaderboard, in-game tier system for like PvP rankings, but expanding that to be outside of the game, towards like more of an esports structure would be really, really fun, and that's something that we would like to. And you get whitelist as well. Congratulations! I'm loving all the new people that we have in the. Very exciting. Good evening. Token utility. Contribute to the Fountain of Elements, a global pool that influences the power of each element and has a payout to contributors at the end of the week. Sounds very interesting. Can you be more specific on how it'll work, and will there be something that's a close analogy? So, I actually cannot compare this to anything that I've ever experienced in the game before. I thought of this one completely independent of anything that I've ever played in the game because I think it's something I always would have liked to see in a game, but I never have. So essentially, the Fountain of Elements, fountain that controls the balance of all the elements within our world. Um, our world being like Centuria, where the game takes place. Um, essentially, what's going to happen is as you play the game, you're going to accumulate elemental energy. This energy is going to be used to power up your monsters of that element. But over time, if you didn't have an additional sink for this elemental energy, you risk ending up with too much of it. People could stockpile it, and it would kind of take away from the gameplay. So, my solution to that is the Fountain of Elements. It's this global pool that basically players can contribute their excess elemental energy to. And when that excess energy is contributed, it changes the balance of that element's strength within the game for everyone. So every week there will be a running total of the number of elemental energies that have been contributed to this pool by the players, by you guys. It's essentially, you can think of it as a weekly competition among the elements. So you're going to vote basically for your favorite element with these tokens. These are not like an on-chain token or anything. I use the term token because I think it's familiar for a lot of people in this space. But it's not like a true token. It's not like Mons or Cents or anything. But essentially, you'll be casting your vote for that element throughout the week with your excess energy. The most interesting part of this, in my opinion, is at the end of each week, the totals will be recorded, and those elements will receive a boost next week in accordance with how many votes they receive. So, this might be a little bit hard without numbers on paper. I apologize. But let's say fire is the leading element that week. So the next week, fire will have their strength boosted by 20% for the rest of the week. All of the other elements will have their stats boosted based on how much their total was relative to the winning element. Again, I know this is hard with words instead of numbers, but so if let's say fire gets 20,000 elemental energies contributed and water gets 15,000, then that week fire would have a 20% boost and water would have a 15%. So it wouldn't be completely outclassed. And actually, water beats fire, so overall water is still strong. But what really makes this interesting and adds additional incentive is we have long-term plans for this to be kind of like a rewarding feature for players in terms of tokens. So when you place your elemental energy vote, and you can do this at any time, multiple times a week, whatever you want, and combine that vote cents with actual tokens, and that multiplies the impact of your vote. So you can basically influence the resulting element for that week. If water is a little bit behind fire, you can pump water by combining it with cents. And now water is dominant for that week. This becomes incredibly important when you get into guild battles, for example. If you have a guild that's predominantly fire, they're going to want fire to be the strong element moving into that week. And then, sorry, I know this is a lot. Lastly, to add another like layer of complexity in earning, I want to distribute cents payouts from this pool to contributors at the end of each week. However, the amount that you receive in a payout will be uh, like relative to the total pool for that element. And again, that sounds confusing, but think of it this way. If you are the only contributor to the light element pool, then you get all of the tokens that were reserved for the light element. And I actually have this on paper. I think that I'm gonna save the exhaustive like numerical details and post the paper for you guys instead. Helpful. But basically, it encourages all of the elements to be around equal contribution because any of them that are lagging behind in contribution have greater earning potential for the contributor. And I'll post a detailed version of this in a little bit. That way, you guys that care can read through it a little better. I know a lot of people are probably just here for free whitelist, so I don't want to murder you with complex game mechanics. So thank you guys for bearing with me. And then congratulations, Cubic. You have whitelist now. Okay. 0xDRS. Thank you for doing this AMA. I know it's still early days. You guys are heads down building. Could you comment on what marketing will look like down the road? Yeah. So one of our main like hiring goals for after Genesis Mint is marketing. We have a lot of the technical and mechanical stuff covered. Our team is really deep when it comes to that. One of the primary places that we see ourselves growing is through marketing. We want to avoid. We've mentioned this before, but we want to avoid like shilling, like influencer promotions. That's not like a good way to go if you want to build a lasting project. And so we're looking to hire like actual marketers, build actual connections with people instead of just like bringing someone in to like basically connect us with just like paid promoters. We want to have like you can think of it more as marketing like partnerships and not just marketing like purchases. If that makes sense. I think that that's one really nice thing about Web3 is a lot of it is through word of mouth. And I think that it needs to be genuine. So we're going to be really hard at work building those connections. And that falls very tightly into Zach's realm. And yeah, so he's already working hard at building those connections and getting to know people, expand marketing influence, and find us the right people to be a part of this team and help us expand. Oh, and then, of course, you get whitelist. Very good question. I think it's always good to know what a project plans to do to like bring in new members. If you're here in the first place, you've probably already believed in a thing or two about the project. You like the vision. But yeah, for bringing in new people, marketing is very important. Okay, we have a question from Eggs. Guys, excited for the launch. What will be the initial LP pairs that we can stake? Okay, this part of tokenomics I do know. We'll have two liquidity pools. We will have Mons and E. Mons is like our governance token or value token. Then we will have the Cents USDC liquidity pool as well. And then Cents is our in-game token. So those will be your two initial LP pairs. And that is dictated by Nat, our tokenomics guy. If you're not familiar with him, look up on Twitter. Nat Eliasson is how I pronounce his name in my head. I don't know if that's right, but I can post his @ He's actually a really good guy to follow if you're just interested in Web3 and DeFi in general, or a number of other things, nutrition, diverse in his skill set. Give a sneak peek. Oh, Eggs at whitelist. Congratulations. Welcome, champion. A question from Dorian. You give a sneak peek of what you'd expect the airdrops for Genesis holders to entail. Absolutely. So one really great thing about the Genesis champions is it allows us to kind of figure out who our like VIP community members are. There's a lot of you, and there's going to continue to be a lot of you. And so, when we want to hold special events and do special airdrops, that's a really useful like metric for us to use to figure out who it should go to. Primarily, what we're going to be airdropping the most, or airdropping the most, is monster eggs. So those monster eggs are going to be the same types of things that you discover in game, but they're going to be very rare in game. So getting them as airdrops is going to be really nice. They're going to be like well integrated into the economy. So receiving those is going to be just like a really nice like little like airdrop monetary boost. The game is set up so that monster demand is very, very high, especially for like dedicated players or maxis. So we plan to have the demand always there, and adding those airdrops is going to be a really nice way to help bring value to you guys. We have other airdrops planned, but we're not allowed to go into some of them because of the legal implications behind futures. I will say that you can expect other like benefits beyond just in-game assets, perhaps more distinct on-chain assets, if you will. But monster eggs will be a really good one in terms of airdrops. And then on top of that, you guys will get special access to certain dungeons within the game that we're going to put there explicitly for Genesis Champion holders. And then there's of course the myriad of mechanical benefits you get from having a Genesis Champion in game from a competitive standpoint. But good question. If you want further elaboration on it, let me know, and happy to do it. We have to be careful about what we say in terms of. Question from LV. Peyton to the Ether. How much of the project is going to be purely done on chain, and how much or what aspects will take place off chain? A lot of projects run into the issues of cumbersome transactions to play a game that's meant to be a smooth loop, even on L2. You still end up breaking any kind of active gameplay. Will all active aspects be simply designed off chain, with passive aspects being on chain, or is there some other solution you're eyeing? Yeah, fantastic question. And we put a lot of thought into in particular, because I'm right there with you. It is something that's been encountered by a lot of projects where they struggle to find that balance. It's tricky because blockchain is an emerging technology and people are excited about it. And at first, people thought the solution to having a blockchain game was to put everything on chain. They're like, oh, like this is awesome. This is the future. As awesome as that is, blockchain technology just isn't where it needs to be right now to have something entirely on, or even heavily on chain, really. It's incredible technology, but with where we are in the progress, you don't think it's feasible. With where the world is on the progress of blockchain, I don't think it's feasible to have the game entirely on chain. So instead, we're only gating things to be on chain where necessary. So trading will be on chain. This is important because it allows us to treat NFTs as like their own assets. Gives us access to NFT trading marketplaces. We're gonna have our own marketplace as well. That way we can help get out of like all the annoying fees on the other sites for you guys. Yeah, so trading's the most important one that'll be done on chain. Other than that, that's about it as far as like on-chain necessities. Anytime you're like spending tokens or receiving tokens, you'll need to do like some sort of transaction. We've got a couple ideas for that so that you're not burdened with having to approve transactions all the time. That's actually the number one thing that we're trying to avoid, is just absolutely hammering people with transactions, because that's taking away from the gameplay experience. The biggest bone that we have to pick with most like on-chain games is it's never going to feel like a game if you have to approve a transaction every 5 minutes. There's some games that have done a good job of avoiding that, and if you look at them, they're pretty much all off-chain because that's how you get around it. So yeah, basically what?
Did you want to touch on the fact that also having a off-chain component allows us to kind of circumvent some of the rules and regulations of mobile app stores and things like that?
Oh yeah, that is a good one. Yeah, I'll be careful about explicitly saying circumvent rules and regulations. Comply with rules and regulations is a good way to look at it. But yeah, so a lot of app stores, well, I mean, there's really two primary ones, but they don't offer support for on-chain games yet. So it can be a little tricky to kind of like find your way into them. But with our game being optimized for like, a mobile experience, it's really important that we get into those stores. And so having a game that's inherently off-chain for the core gameplay is crucial for getting that approval to be in those stores. And it makes your experience a lot smoother as well. So that's kind of what Zach was getting at in terms of the core gameplay being off-chain. And then on top of that, it's also like an anti-botting measure that we have, or anti like multi-account measure that we have. We have a mechanic where players will need like keys to move their assets from off-chain to on-chain. So they'll be like off-chain by default, and then you'll use these keys to bridge your assets over. This is actually really important for a number of reasons. The main one, well, I don't know if it's the main one, but one benefit is that it helps us avoid botting. Someone can't just create an account, accrue a bunch of assets, and then move them all over on chain. Is you have to play like for an extended period of time to get access to these keys. Genesis champion holders are going to be receiving keys a lot more frequently through airdrops. So you guys won't have any issues like bridging your stuff over. Or it's not really bridging. You can think of it more as minting if you're turning something from a Web 2 asset into a Web 3. But you guys are going to get more than enough keys as Genesis holders to mint all of your stuff, because it's important that the game doesn't feel off-chain for you guys. Whereas like new entrants and people down the road, we don't want them to be able to flood the market with stuff if they haven't put in the resources. So the key mechanism helps us keep that a little bit. And then on top of that, using those keys helps us to kind of control the flow of the market in like a new entrant sense. So we can help like with the emission rate of those and make sure that the people aren't going crazy with like creating multiple accounts. You can circle a lot of the downfall of popular Web3 games so far to not having the proper like safety mechanisms for controlling like a market runaway. I think the keys are going to help with that too. And then lastly, the final benefit of the key system and not forcing everything to be on chain is that in the event that Polygon runs into some sort of like network issues or like traffic issues, if any of you were on a Polygon based game a couple months ago, you might remember Sunflower Game and the impact that it had on the entire chain. Our key system helps us be immune to events like that, because if you're obtaining assets in our game, you don't have to wait until a transaction's approved to use them. You can start using them, and then whenever the network is, normal again, then you can use that opportunity to bridge them over with your keys, and use them for trading. So it helps us avoid like having to halt the game altogether just because Polygon's running into issues. As we mentioned, blockchain technology still has a long way to go. And if you're dedicated to playing a game, it can be really frustrating to have to hang out and wait for an opportunity to get on. Then, yeah, that was a long answer. So apologies. And Helvi, welcome to the whitelist. Good question. From Professor Plums, what kind of safeguards are there? Or what kind of safeguards will be in place to prevent whales from simply dominating the game? That's another really good question, and one that games have been trying to solve for a really long time. Primarily, the way that we're preventing whales from dominating the game is through the min-maxing components that we have in place. Most notably, the evolution mechanics. And the biggest boost that you can get for your monster, and we touched on this in the last AMA, but the biggest boost that you can get for your monster is through evolving it. Evolving your monster only takes one duplicate of it. So with just 2 monsters, you can turn it into an evolution, and it'll be really, really strong. Top of that, The other ways to improve your monsters is by leveling them up, which is incredibly doable with the daily energy that you'll get, and then also giving them really strong runes. Obtaining like a really good rune will not be that difficult. Obtaining the perfect rune is difficult. What that does is, for a normal player, it means that you'll have a competitively viable build without having to do anything like insane investment wise. All it takes is, basic RNG to get the right monsters. There's a lot of them out there, so you don't have to get the perfect team. Got to get a couple of them, and then we're encouraging trading a lot. So if you get a decent one, maybe trade it up slightly for something better. To someone that wanted that monster in particular. That's a good way to improve your team really quickly. Is just by being active, playing every day, using the free resources that we give you, and evolving your monsters from there. And then for whales, their main opportunity to expand is going to be through collecting multiple duplicates. You need 2 monsters to evolve. You can put up to like 11 duplicates into a monster for like somewhat marginal gain. So they're not that significant, but they're enough to where if you're doing it on your monster, it will make a difference. That's kind of how we give whales an opportunity to still have something to do without giving them like a crazy advantage. Because that doesn't improve their strategy at all. It just gives them more stats. When it comes down to it, you're going to have the benefit of having, like a strategy behind you if you've put thought into the team that you're building. And then lastly, to kind of tie that all together, the duplicate system is weighted towards regular players. It benefits you guys. Well, I don't know which side you're going to fall on. I don't know if you're a whale or a regular player, but for the regular players, the duplicate system is actually really great because it means that you can power up your rares. So rare is kind of like the middle tier rarity in our game. It means that you can power up your rares to be beyond the strength of like a super rare or ultra rare, just by getting a lot of duplicates of that rare. It's going to be very feasible and very doable to create a competitively viable team. Hopefully that helps, and I think that it'll help us bridge that gap quite a bit. That is an issue that a lot of games struggle with. And then lastly, to kind of tie that together, we're not as motivated monetarily as a AAA game is. So we actually do care about having that balance. If the game is balanced, everyone's happy. And if the game is like a pay-to-win game, then nobody's really happy. And we actually don't benefit either, because if the game just favors whales, we don't have a thriving economy. And so we're not getting value through tokens. So we're actually really dedicated to creating a robust game economy and encouraging everyone to be a participant. We want to bring that value back to you guys, and Web3 allows us to do that. Oh, and also, of course, you get whitelist. I added the role while I was talking, but I forgot to announce it, so everyone knows Professor Plums is now whitelist. Right, guy? Kind of a weird comment there, but I appreciate it. You're a very sweet person. Looking for questions. We have a question from Sauce. Great concept. We'll always have a following. Is there a rough estimate of when the mobile app is coming in relation to the game drop? Yes. So it'll basically come as quickly as we can get the approval from the app stores for it. We're building in Unity, which means that as long as we have the UI built for a mobile game, shifting like the code logic to a mobile platform is really, really easy through Unity. So essentially, once we have our game built, we can submit it to the App Store for review. As long as it's approved, we can add it like immediately. So it's really important that we get that mobile app out. We've talked a lot in the past about the prevalence of mobile gaming in just like the world. A lot of people don't realize how like massive that market is. It's a great way to reach new entrants, and it's a really good way to give people a convenient mode of play. If any of you have played mobile games in the past, you're probably aware of how dominant that like model of convenience is for gameplay. It's really nice to be able to log onto a game, just throughout your day and just check on it instead of having to dedicate like an hour at a time to it in front of a computer. So we will be getting the mobile version out as quickly as possible after that PC launch is finished. Another good question, and another person on the whitelist. Congratulations. Okay, tiny question. If I somehow get 5 Summoner NFT, because I can't play with every one of them at the same time, will it somehow be a bit of overkill? So it depends on your strategy. So I'm someone who, and again, this is me speaking as a player and not as a founder. I would want to own 5, at least from 5 different elements, because I would want to have a strengthened light, dark, fire, water, and nature. So having a Genesis champion from each element allows you to do that. However, the light and dark champions are going to be in lesser supply, so not everyone will be able to have all 5 elements. I would say the best strategy is to collect probably 3 for the core elements. You have fire, water, and nature. Of course, it's entirely up to you, but there will be benefit. In addition to the airdrops are already a great benefit. We're doing airdrops on a per champion basis and not a per wallet basis. If you own, 3 champions, you get 3 champions worth of airdrops. It's not just, like single to your wallet. So that's one benefit of owning multiple. But then on top of that, as we progress through the game and particularly as we expand the champion mechanics further, to allow for complexity, like in the late game, that's when you're going to start to see champions having those secondary skills that we mentioned and having those like skill abilities to improve battle and strategy. So that's when I could see it being incredibly important to have multiple champions of the same element. You might want to have a nature champion that has a secondary skill that favors attack. You might want to have a nature champion with a secondary skill that favors speed. Again, not financial advice. You can do whatever you want with regards to champion collection. But just to give you some insight from a strategic standpoint, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to mix and match these champions in your teams, even if you can only use at launch like 1 per battle. Across an account, you could use far more than 1, and then long term, you could use literally an endless number depending on what your play style is and what your preference is. I'm someone that likes having options when I play a game, but I have a lot of friends who are totally happy like picking 1 and letting that dictate their play style. I'm the other way around. I want to have options that dictate my own play style. So hopefully that answers what you were wondering. And you already have whitelist. That's a good question.
Did you? Sorry, I didn't hear the answer fully. Did you mention like raids might have very specific elements to them and things like that?
Oh yeah, that's something that we could touch on a little bit too. There could be features down the road where we like gate it to certain elements. Like if you have like a nature element raid and you need like a nature champion to access it, or that sort of thing. So I wouldn't base your entire champion collection decision off of that, but there are going to be a lot of like content related to like specific champion types, just to make sure that we're recognizing the value that everyone's put into those. Like as I've mentioned, we want to do that like literally wherever we can, or every on-chain component of this game. Is even though we are building a game, it is still Web3, and we want to highlight that Web3 component if possible. Thanks for mentioning. Okay. Next question. Sorry, I'm kind of like zooming through these because I want to make sure that we get to as many as we can within the hour. Are the eggs equivalent to gear, or do the eggs contain items or gear, or are they equivalent to energy? So eggs are equivalent to monsters. You'll receive an egg, and it'll hatch into a monster. The reason that we have them in eggs is because it helps us create that randomization component. That way, when you get an egg, you're not guaranteed any one asset. It could be a number of possibilities. This helps you maximize trading value, and it also helps us add that RNG component to where people can get really lucky and get something like super valuable without putting in like an equivalent amount to earn it. So, for example, you might just be running, like maybe you spend $5 on energy refills, and you end up with an egg, and then that egg hatches into an ultra rare. Well, that's an opportunity for you now to sell that ultra rare for more than you paid to earn it in the first place. Those just allow us to add that RNG into the game without like fully exposing what a monster is going to be from the get-go. And with regards to items and gear, that's what our runes will be. So each monster will have 6 rune slots. Each of them will have a different shape. So we'll be slotting runes into those. The runes will have stats attributed to them. So when you put them on your monster gains those stats. And then by like combining those 6, you're essentially building your monster the way you want it to. So your monster will have basic stats, and it'll have its skills that are unique to itself. And then by using those runes, you can basically turn it into anything you want. So a monster might inherently be a tank, but maybe you prefer more of an attack approach. So you slot that monster out with attack, for example, or vice versa. Maybe something conventionally attacking monster, you want to throw your opponent off, so you build it as a tank. Your opponent expects it to be attacked, so they're targeting it, but it's tanking everything. And then maybe you come in hot with a tank monster that's built as an attacker instead. So that's where you get the strategy in there, and that helps us. That helps you really have flexibility in your team and gives people an opportunity to create like a unique strategy. And that's what keeps the meta fresh. If any of you have played a game like similar to this, or really anything that involves like a PvP aspect, having choices in the meta is really important for like creating that strategy, making sure that you're not just like handing people a victory for owning something in the first. Good question. You have now joined the whitelist. Congratulations. Okay. Yeah, PKT says we need a whiteboard for this. I think that was during the Fountain of Elements part. I'll be sure to link that after this call. Someone remind me. So voice is cutting out a little bit. Okay. Noted for next time. I will join from mobile. Make sure it's consistent. I also have my my threshold up for my microphone. Perhaps I could lower it a little bit, and that would help you guys. Just a second to do that. All right, I lowered my input sensitivity, so that should help a little bit, hopefully. If it keeps going, let me know. Okay, moving along. All right, we have an Axie profile asking about scholarships. I love it. Yes. Question about scholarship. Do you plan to make them available by creating smart contract between owner and renter? So we have something that'll be similar to a scholarship mechanic. We're going to be calling it the Alliance. So what you'll do is you'll stake a monster to the Alliance, and then it'll be loaned out to players automatically. It saves you the trouble of managing who your scholars are. So it kind of like eliminates that step of you having to go and heavily recruit them. We do the work for you. We will match you with viable players. Your monster will be used by them. When your monster is used through the Alliance, at the end of the quest, you have a chance to discover an Alliance chest. Those chests have a chance to contain cents, the in-game currency, or rather the in-game token. When cents are discovered, it'll be split between you and the person that has used your monster. We're probably just going to do a 50-50 split, but we're also going to have a lot of community dialogue on that. We want to get you guys' input on it. So we'll hold some like deeper community discussions on what y'all's thoughts are on kind of the split and the allocation for it. And then also how we can like optimize that experience for people who want to want to be managing their team and targeting like scholars, if you will. So kind of something in between what maybe a traditional game would do, where you can like take a friend's monster in a battle like once a day for help or something. Somewhere between that and the Axie scholarship mechanic. Good question. And I'm happy to elaborate on that mechanic further if you ever want to have a discussion on it. Yes, Professor Plums agreed that a good mobile on-chain game would be huge. The space really needs that, and they need it to be something that is not just like idle play. Oh, by the way, idle play being like when you stake something and it just earns over time, and you don't have to do like anything. By the way, Nat told me that there's going to be like some crackdown on stuff like that. So if you don't hear mention from us about just staking an asset directly to earn returns for doing nothing, that's why. They're being pretty serious about NFTs that do that, and I've heard that OpenSea is even starting to like delist some of those and like remove collections because of it. Apparently, it's like a pretty clear violation of, I don't know, some technical law that Nat knows and that I probably should know. Okay, question from Lycops. Hi, to win, will good NFTs be good for the best players, or is strategy important too? It'll be a mix of both. So I'm really big on strategy. I think that it would be really important to have a game where it's balanced. To me, balance doesn't mean that everything's the same. It means that it's a good combination of RNG and strategy. And so what that'll entail is, as you play the game, you will accumulate monsters. It's going to be up to you to build those monsters the way that you want in order to overcome your opponent. So as I mentioned earlier, taking like a unique strategy with your monsters, so building an attack monster to be more HP based, or vice versa, an HP monster to be attack based. Stuff like that is how you can get an edge on your opponent and kind of create that advantage for yourself without just like buying it. So I would say that it's going to be a healthy blend, and we're really dedicated to upholding that. A pay-to-win game is never fun, and pay-to-win does not mix well with play-to-earn. There's got to be some give and take there. So that's really important to us.
Also, I don't know if this is a little bit further down the road, so I don't know if you're facing this, but with there being a marketplace and trading, that brings in a whole new area of strategies, kind of a businessman at that point, and you can really strategize completely through marketplace transactions.
Yeah.
And that's completely outside of the game. So you can strategize within the game, like you were saying, Palmer, with runes and things like that. But you can also strategize outside of the game, which makes this space really, really interesting.
Yeah, and actually, just to kind of put a bow on that comment, Zach and I met on a mobile game about 10 years ago that had like that very mechanic. It had an in-game marketplace back before those were like essentially banned by Apple. It had like a very vibrant in-game marketplace where you could trade monsters, and there was like a very like heavy market for people who were just like day traders essentially of these monsters. And there are a lot of PC games that have had similar environments to this as well. I know like WoW and RuneScape have had a lot of stuff like that. So yeah, if any of you are familiar with that, you know how interesting it can get when you add that layer of complexity. You really do have people that find tremendous profit, even like especially in the NFT space, just by flipping stuff. So when you add that component to a game, things get really, really interesting. But good question, Lycops. You have now been added to the whitelist. Moozers, would be super nice if, when minting these Genesis champions, you couldn't get duplicate elements, meaning people who mint 5 get all 5. That would really make the light dark ones rarer, because they would only go to the 4th and 5th mints in wallets. Yeah, I agree. I think that would be awesome. I could be mistaken, but I think some of that starts to impact gas price. Like the more code logic you have in there, the higher like the gas cost is. But I'm not positive. I just know that I had suggested something similar, not quite that, but another like rule like to check for stuff to our smart contract developer, and he was like, yeah. Like, it would be awesome to have that, but it would really destroy gas prices. So If that's not an accurate statement regarding your question, I apologize. But that is one reason that we haven't put like additional measures in like that, because I guess at some point it does start influencing the price of the gas. And again, if that is like not correct, I apologize, and I must have misunderstood what our smart contract developer said. But then another thing that I will note is that's why trading is so important, and that's why it's so encouraged in our ecosystem, is because even if you don't get something that you want, someone else probably wants it. The only exception would be the light dark ones, where those are probably going to be in demand from like everyone, because most people will not end up with one. I wish we could make everything like that. That'd be sick. But then you don't have anything that's rare. So, but yeah, very good point. Okay, could you elaborate a bit more? This is a question from Teve. Could you elaborate a bit more about the affinity and dual value props versus rarity score? Not 100% understanding how it all lines up as properties. Yeah, very good question. We've talked a lot about this internally, but it's not always easy to communicate externally, so happy to discuss it here. So the affinity component is basically a trait that we are rolling like aside from scarcity, like trait scarcity. So it still has the same rules, like level 1 affinity will occur, like 100% chance of the time for the Genesis champions. Level 2 affinity will be obtained by rolling like 2 affinity based traits. Level 3 will be obtained by 3 affinity based traits, and so on and so forth until you get to the maximum of level 6 affinity. However, these aren't going to have like the same rarity curves that you might expect from like normal rarity based traits within a project. So a lot of them do like a bell curve or like a modified linear curve. This one is just going to be like for the elemental traits, it's going to be like a pretty standard linear like decline. So it's going to look like 100%, 80%, 60%, 40%, 20%, 10%, if I'm not mistaken. So basically decreasing by 20% until you get to 20 when it becomes like 10 for the 6th trait. Again, I'm sorry, I know numbers aren't fun when they're spoken. But yeah, so that's essentially what it'll look like. And the only reason that we make that distinction to you guys is so that people understand that the real utility for those traits is both in-game and through the collection. So most, if not all, PFP collections are like agnostic to the traits that they have in terms of their utility. They're all equally useful in the eyes of the smart contract, in the eyes of the utility, and all of the like usefulness of them is through manufactured scarcity of their traits. We wanted our champions to have an element that didn't play into that so heavily. Staying true to the fact that we are a game, we have champions that will have like incredibly common traits in terms of like trait scarcity, but could end up with a very high elemental affinity. This makes it so that if you get a trait that's not as like cosmetically scarce or exciting, you could still end up with a really high elemental affinity on it, and therefore it has strengthened in-game utility. So by doing that, we kind of create the dual value component, which is what you're asking about. So it's independent of the rarity score, the way that you would expect a rarity score to work, but it helps retain like the utility-based value of those champions. Let me know if that made sense, if that elaboration was helpful. It makes sense in my head and on paper, but I don't know if it's as easy to follow when spoken out loud. Then also, you've been added to the whitelist, so now you get to find out for yourself when you mint one. Okay. What cream do I use on my face? Shaving cream from time to time. Good question. We have a question from Cinnamon, I believe. What does the roadmap look like after alpha game release? So we have that on the roadmap actually. So the roadmap leads up to like alpha game release in phase 2, and then we have an entire phase 3 with features listed there. But essentially, alpha game will be launching. In fact, let me pull it up for reference so I can give you perfect info. So we will have like our alpha launch of the game. It'll have story mode. We've got it planned for a PvE with 4 areas. So they'll be listed like areas 1 through 4. You'll have the ability to hatch monsters from eggs, and you'll have the ability to stake monsters to the concentrator, which is where you'll be receiving elemental energy to strengthen and upgrade those monsters, and also contribute later to the Fountain of Elements. After that alpha launch, the next thing that's coming is dungeons. Dungeons are where you get higher egg emissions. So that's where you're collecting more monsters. That's where, as an end game player, you're going to want to spend most of your time. It's also where you're going to get stronger runes. So the runes are what strengthen your monsters. They're very important to gameplay and strategy. Those will be found in dungeons, which is being heavily prioritized after launch. After dungeons comes Fountain of Elements, which we touched on earlier. It's like basically a weekly community competition to help, one, strengthen bonds, and maybe create some enemies. And then on top of that, it'll help keep the metagame fresh because the leading elements are going to change quite a bit. After that, PvP, which is what I'm looking the most forward to. We'll probably launch unranked and then add ranked after that once we get a good feel for what our PvP landscape looks like on the player side. And then after that, we have monster staking to the Alliance, which is where you're looking at staking your monsters to new players, sharing them in your battles, and earning tokens through that. After that, we have a slew of different things that we want to add to the game. Most notably, guilds will be coming after that monster staking. So through guilds, that's where you're going to be fighting alongside other players against other players. So for anyone who's played a game with a guild mechanic, you know how exciting and fun that is. After that, we'll be rolling out global events where everyone in the game will be fighting against global bosses, like completing global challenges for rewards, that sort of thing. We'll have some POAPs in those. And so if any of you who don't know what a POAP is, it's basically like an NFT that certifies that you participated in something. Those will be, distributed probably through airdrop to people. Just another fun way to remind everyone that, this is a Web3 game, even though it'll have a lot of popular Web2 components. And then after that, we've got, real-time implementation for battles. And then we're going to be collecting community feedback and getting feature requests from you guys as well, because we like a challenge. So we want you guys to challenge us on features. Oh, and of course, the land play. I can't believe I skipped over that. Right before the real-time stuff, we've got an awesome land play planned for you guys. We're going to keep up with how the, just kind of the overall gaming landscape looks for land plays, but we have a pretty good idea of what that's going to look like already, if nothing changes drastically before then. Yeah, good question. That info can be found on our website in the roadmap section. So definitely check it out. It's a good visual. And then I'd also like to get a gameplay roadmap explicitly out, like for you guys to look at, just like as a nice and easy graphic. And yeah, it looks like we're right about in an hour now. It looks like we only have a few more questions, so I'm gonna hop into them. I think we can fit them in here without Satoshi killing me. Okay, and you've also been added to the whitelist. Congratulations. How long until we expect the Alliance system to be live? Frankly, it'll take however long it takes to get the previous features going. They're not insanely heavy lift features. So prior to Alliance, we have Dungeon, Fountain of Elements, PvP, and that's it. And then we're hard at work on Alliance. From launch, we're going to have our smart contract developers working on the Alliance component. So hopefully as quickly as possible. But to be like completely honest, timeline estimates are tough on stuff like that from a smart contract standpoint. They can be fickle. They can be difficult to develop properly and most importantly, safely. There can't be any vulnerabilities in it. So, I mean, as quickly as possible. Probably like a couple months, if I had to guess. But again, I'm not great with estimates on that one. But yeah, we're already going to be working on it to get the integration out as quickly as possible, because I think that so we'll already have like earning components in the game prior to that, but that's one that'll really bust it open and add like an insane amount of like depth and complexity to the earning mechanics, and stimulate emissions as well. Okay, Axie scholarship mechanic was painful. Please use Pig Axie's one. Thank you. Yeah, I'll check that one out. I've heard a lot of good things about Pig Axie, so happy to look at it and see if it's gonna have some stuff that's relevant to our game. Are there any plans to build a native mobile app for the game in the medium term? Not sure if I understand the question, unless you missed the earlier part in the AMA where we touched on mobile stuff. So we're going to be building a mobile app right after our PC launch. So since we're in Unity, it'll be a smooth transition. It'll be coming out as soon as we get approval from like the app stores after we submit our like our app for them. And then you're now on the whitelist. Okay, any more questions? Thinking about it now. I'm in 2 French group guilds. Would it be possible to get some whitelist to airdrop on the interested one in these communities? Oh, it looks like Satoshi answered already. Yeah, I would say support ticket's going to be the best opportunity for us to talk about that more. Happy to discuss it with you. We could do it even by voice if you want. But since it's not going to be particularly relevant to everyone else in the AMA, we'll save it for after this offline, or outside of the AMA rather. And with that, it looks like we're done with all the questions, unless there are some that I missed in like general chat. Nope, looks like we're good. Awesome. Well, Satoshi, we did a good job. We stated about a 1-hour timeline, so I hope you're happy with that. We'll have a much smaller file to upload, and it'll be a lot more manageable. Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If we can make it work tomorrow, I'd love to have another one of these. So if you guys want that, let us know, like in the general chat, and we'll figure out a way to get it set up for a time that works for people. Even after we do our launch, I'd love to have these just to discuss mechanics, get feedback from you guys, answer questions. Sometimes it's a lot easier to do these for people instead of like reading through chat all the time. So happy to do it. Always feel free to reach out to me, any of the admins, the ambassadors in our chats. We love to talk to you guys. So yeah, feel free anytime. Our door's always open. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll talk to y'all again soon.